You're a hardcore gamer. You went out and you bought the Xbox Elite, and you love to use it on your computer. You use it on your Xbox too. But what you hate is this.
What's up, YouTube? This is Nick Brox, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make an Xbox Elite S or X controller, depending on how you look at it. Let's get started. Some things you're going to need to go ahead and get this project done are prying tool. This is a spudger from a iFixit kit. This is also another form of a prying tool used to open phone cases and things like that. You're going to need a bit driver with a TR9 and a TR6 bit. And what this will allow you to do is get all the screws out. You're going to need a set of cutters and a file. You're also going to need a small hand drill. I use my power drill because I have real small bits to modify the 1S controller frame or your 1X controller frame once you get the whole thing apart. To get started, we're going to do a complete teardown on this controller, and it's not really something I am going to include in this video because there's about 100 of these on YouTube. What I'm going to show you is how to modify your controller and some parts from a 1S or a 1X controller, model number 1708, to replace these triggers with a more modern assembly. Let's get started. Okay, one thing that I don't want to do with this controller is desolder these rumbles to get them out. So what I did was I took some cutters like these and just clipped right along here, which allows me to easily pull the rumbles out without desoldering the wiring. So with that all said and done, I already have the screws out of this board. And we'll take the screws out of the triggers, which this controller that I bought was broken. So actually the triggers were broken and the bumpers were broken. So you see this one plastic piece from the trigger actually didn't have to be unscrewed. Pull our triggers off. There we go. Okay, so with the rumbles off and the wires unrouted, and my rumble motors, the big ones that pulled through this cut I made, we can take this whole board off without having to do any soldering. You are going to want to keep the 1X, or sorry, the Elite button contact membrane, because the home button is a little bit different than the 1S, so it'll work a little better. Now, once you have everything out of the Elite frame, we can get rid of it. doesn't have, it has, you know, this chintzy trigger design setup that breaks and the bumpers that break. So that is gone. And I already took apart one of my 1S controllers. We are going to take the frame. We're going to use this frame to build up our new 1X Elite. This is the controller that Microsoft should have built when they made the new Elite. We do actually need our Elite frame. And what you want to do is take that frame, make yourself a little template so we can cut out a section of the 1S frame for the mode switch. So here's my little template right here, just a piece of paper. Marked it out. I used a light from underneath, traced it. Then what I did was put it onto the 1S frame, actually from the back. Used a razor blade to score this part of the chassis, drilled it, and then used a file to clean everything up. And what this accounts for is this little switch right here. That's our mode select switch for the Elite motherboard. So to get this all set up, what we're going to do is take our Elite buttons. They just fit right in there. And I like these compared to the standard Xbox buttons because they're black and gray. They look a lot better, in my opinion. Drop all those in. Now, one thing I noticed is that the Chrome Elite home button does not fit in here. It fits, but it's really tight. So what I did was I took my 1S home button. Obviously, since this is the 1S frame, it drops right in. Now you want to take the Elite pad, drop that in. And go ahead and drop our Elite front motherboard in. We'll put in some screws. Now the Elite motherboard is actually exactly the same layout as the 1S and 1X motherboards, so these should all just bolt right in, no problem. You can take all the Elite screws and screw this in directly to your 1S frame, whether you bought the frame separate or you're using a another broken controller to steal parts from. So now that we have that done, we've got our home button working. The B button doesn't have the motherboard behind it, so it's a little dull. Now, on the Elite controller, there are two white spacers that fit behind your shoulder buttons. We need to make sure that we put these into our 1S controller. You simply just push in. You can see them right here. There it is. There is our, oh. Okay, you can see this trigger spring is actually in the wrong spot, so we need to fix that. All right, so the 1S controller and the 1X controller have these improved trigger mechanisms. Just one screw that holds the rumble in, and the magnets are actually contained with clips rather than heat shrink. It also has the different design top piece that will allow us to use the 1S bumpers. So don't forget your sync button. Take our bumpers. And then the top piece, which mine is actually broken, but it snapped when I took it apart, but it still locks on just fine. If we can clip it on there. And there we go. We now have 1S bumpers on our Elite motherboard. So the rest of the buildup is fairly straightforward. We're going to take our Elite back motherboard, line it up, it should just connect just like that. Take our 2 screws and install those. Forgot the headphone jack. So the headphone jack on the Elite is actually a different design than what's on the 1S. So the 1S has this hole filled, and as you can see, the microphone is the headset jack is a little bit different. We want to use the Elite one since we are using the Elite base, but it does just slot right in to the 1S frame. Then we can take our other motherboard, it clips right in. And just gets secured with these 2 screws. Now on the 1S controllers, and I'm assuming the 1X controller, they redesigned the way the rumble is set up, and you don't have to desolder. They slide in from the back side of the board right here, and the wires don't have to go through anything to install them. The rumbles just come around the front, and then you just route the wires. I do have to take the bumpers back off because the rumbles need to go on there. So the rumbles are a little loose in these triggers, so what I may do when I take this back apart is put something in there to keep them from shaking around. They kind of make a rattling noise. I should grab some electrical tape or something fix that. Alright, so there you have it. Now that I made sure I put the rumbles into the triggers, I have full motion on my triggers with the rumbles installed. Like I said, these do kind of, they are a little looser fit than the 1S rumbles. So you may want to just wrap some tape or something like that. For now, since this is just a prototype to see how it works, I'm just gonna leave them. I usually turn the trigger rumble off anyway, so it's not really a big deal. Another improvement on the 1S frame is the fact that they added in more tabs for the wiring on the trigger rumbles. So rather than using tape, you can go ahead and just tuck all of that wiring down into these channels. Just double check that it doesn't pull when you move the triggers. And yeah, that's the frame buildup. You can see our selector button. Do I have this backwards? Yeah. Okay, selector button, when you put it the right way, slides in and still switches. Now, I'm waiting on a new faceplate. I want a black faceplate for this. So I'm not going to cut a hole in my 1S faceplate. I'm just going to leave that on setting 1 for now. And once I get a new faceplate, I'll go ahead and I'll make that hole. Okay, moving on to the back of the controller. The Elite is a little bit different. If you look closely, you can also see that these are the original notches. Let me see if I can point to these a little better. These are the original notches in the Elite controller to clear the back bumper retainer. These are the notches in the 1S, so they are further out. So what I did was I just I lined them up and kind of marked them, and then I just took a flat knife file and filed these notches out. That way my back shell would sit flat on the 1S triggers. So you just file these down. And that should allow you to fit this nice and flush on the back here. Just tuck it over that first. Push down your triggers a little. And there we have it. Sits down nice and flush. And beforehand it did not. You are going to have a little bit more of a gap just because the these are made different than the 1S, so the frame doesn't quite fit the same, and obviously this piece is different, but that gets covered by the battery cover anyway. You won't see it. Let's pop this back off. Need to connect this ribbon cable. Okay, so once you have that properly clearanced, obviously your controller fits right in. I'm going to be running just standard 1S parts for now. My Elite that I ordered broken did not come with the proper thumbsticks, and I want to play with the controller. Once I get the paddles and everything, I'll take this back apart and swap the thumbsticks out. One other thing to note, this little piece of poly tape is supposed to go on the motherboard. This front one right here. The menu button on my motherboard is completely trash. Doesn't work. I think something was spilt on this controller. You don't need this poly tape if you're using plastic thumbsticks like I will be. However, if you are using the metal thumbsticks with the Elite, which I'll be switching to, but I'll also be switching my motherboard, so I'll make sure the tape is on there. You could short out this thumbstick, so make sure that tape stays there. I'm also just going to be running the black 1S D-pad for now, since I do not have my swappable D-pads yet. That just clips in the same way. Real simple setup. Nice and easy. So, since I do not have the faceplate that I want to modify, I'll just be throwing on this 1S faceplate without the select switch, and then the rest of the controller just goes back together the way you would have taken it apart. All of our buttons seem to press correctly, so just pop these back on. Now, another thing I had to do, since my rechargeable battery that I'm using, the setup is a little bit different. There were two tabs on here that I just had to trim off to get this to clip into the back of my Elite controller so that I can use it. And there you have it. This is a functioning... I think that battery might be dead real quick. There we go. We've got a fully functioning Elite 1S controller with our improved bumpers, triggers, and mid-frame. Stay tuned, because once I get the new faceplate and a couple other things, I will be completing this build, modifying the front faceplate to get back our function switch, and installing the paddles and the swappable thumbsticks and D-pad. But for all intents and purposes, this is the Elite S controller.